So the original plan was to record this like a real motovlogger and actually talk during the bike ride, but of course I forgot. I've only got this dinky little action cam and all you're going to hear is wind noise, so you get the audio commentary after the fact. So before I even get started, I'm going to go off on a little tangent. You're going to get a lot of tangents, I'm afraid. If you like listening to this channel, that's what you're going to get. And my rant is about every bike being called a beginner bike. And I don't know if you've experienced this, where you're looking at bike reviews or you're looking up something like a 650 or whatever, and everything seems to be described as, oh, that's a really good starter, oh, that's really good for beginners, really beginner friendly, that bike. And I do get what people are saying by that. They mean like it's less likely to kill you if you sneeze. It's more forgiving at lower rev ranges, you can take off from lights a bit easier, stuff like that. But it does sound kind of diminutive when, if you think about like a Kawasaki GPZ that maybe would have had like 45, 50 horsepower. I mean, that was a sports bike in the olden days, maybe a commuter. But now, I mean, the Kawasaki Vulcan I have, once ever, someone described it as vicious, and I thought, that's cool, that's nice, that's sexy. And someone described it as classy, that's also cool. But the ratio of those descriptors to the thousands of lines I've heard about, oh, that's such a good beginner bike, oh, that's a really good starter, and no one means it in a bad way. But it's just kind of nonsense in a way, because a 125 is a beginner bike, I thought, in the UK, and now there's a lot more 250s, 300s, Ninja 500, CBR 500, stuff like that, which are really good commuters. And even, I wouldn't even call a 500 a beginner bike, to be honest. But yeah, that's my rant about everything being a beginner bike. Maybe I'm getting short man syndrome about my poor little Vulcan. I did go from the VN900, and I loved that to pieces, but it turned like an Arctic lorry, and it just wasn't as fun. The prospect of hopping on it, getting out and about, all I could really, and this is my skill, I'm not having a go at the bike, all I could really do is find a nice straight line and cruise, because that's kind of the point of it. But with the Vulcan 650S, it's nimble. I want to be on it. I don't care if it's raining. Everything is quite nice. And yeah, maybe you could call that beginner friendly. But the reason I'm going on this tirade at the minute is because today I've been riding the I'm going to edit this and go back with the real name. This is the Suzuki S1000GX. Not to be confused with, which I did, the Suzuki S1000GT Plus. The S1000 GT Plus is what I set out to have a test ride on. When I got to lovely, perfect, amazing wheels in Peterborough, big fan, lovely day out, this is what the demonstrator was. That's on me, not them. But it is exactly the same, I think, K5 GSX1000 engine from, I don't know how many years ago, but quite a few years ago. And I take that as kind of a compliment, kind of a good thing, that it's such a bulletproof engine that it's still going to be put into a 2025 model. So what I have actually had a test ride on today is the S1000GX. Same thing, same frame probably, same engine definitely, same TFT screen and gadgets and rider modes, but it's a little bit more ADV, it's a little bit more upright and, in my opinion, fugly. That is subjective, it's just me. I've been through Power Ranger phase, I've been through Pirate phase, I've ridden, the sportsy, colourful things, I've worn the sportsy, colourful things, and I've dressed like a pirate, I've ridden potato bikes. I've yet to get to the point of thinking adventure bikes aren't hideous, but I came close to being converted today. So the reason I went on that tirade about everything being a beginner bike is because this bike is where that statement makes no sense. This bike is a lot more forgiving for visibility, U-turns, slow riding, slow racing. If you ever feel like you're tippy-tapping your feet on the floor, which I still occasionally might do on the Vulcan, I'm ashamed to say that I almost never U-turn. But I did this on this bike without thinking. So long as you don't sneeze and kill yourself, I don't know if YouTube's going to ban me for that selection of words. This, you could also argue, is beginner friendly. So, on to kind of my review of this bike. This isn't a bike review channel, but let's see how we go. Now, I'm sorry it's not a great picture. I just sort of had a quick little whip out of the phone before this very quick turnaround of getting on the bike for my turn. And then the next people's turn, it was an open day at Wheels. It was quiet, but of course all the fellas just wanted to get on a demonstrator. So I hopped on it and promptly pooed myself. Not because of the power or, massive engine or, it was too fast. It was just because I hadn't taken a moment to figure out where everything is. Side note, if you ever want to just feel really comfortable on your own bike, really at home, really skilled on your own motorcycle, the best way to do this is have a test ride, about 30 minutes, on a completely different bike. Get used to it, enjoy yourself, have a blast, give the keys back, get on your own bike, and bliss. It feels like coming home. It's everything just, you will lean harder, you will be quicker, you will be smoother and more mindful and all that. So yeah, can't recommend a little test ride enough. Anyway, back to the GX. A lot because, I have an enormous amount of experience. I've been riding maybe 10-15 years between 3 or 4 bikes. What I will say is this is a very confusing hybrid of bikes. So obviously I've got to get used to pegs being kind of sporty, which I didn't expect for a Tourer bike. This isn't the Sport Tourer, this is the Tourer. And it was still quite perked up, knees in my chest almost. No, that's an exaggeration. But they were a lot further back than I expected. If I owned this bike, I'd also need much sleeker boots because my big fatty sort of leather shoe did not want to fit under the clutch or around anything. So I was pretty much just quick shifting the whole time. Now, when I say this bike is fast, it's not fast in a way that is terrifying, like, oh no, I can't control this. It's fast in a way that you don't notice, and that is what makes it terrifying. If I lost my concentration for a fraction of a second, I'm suddenly speeding. Maybe not by much, but it's way too comfortable to just be 15 miles over the limit. So it is so comfy in that regard. I don't know what to put that down to. Maybe the double size engine that I'm used to, or maybe the windscreen that I don't have, so I'm not being buffeted, so it doesn't feel that fast. So it reminds me of the first time I ever sat in a 1 Series, which isn't a hypercar or anything by any means, but I was like 20 years old, and just zoop, I was doing 80 when I thought I was doing 50 or 60. So that's the kind of thing that will fool you. The other thing that surprised me is that it is an inline 4, which my memory had exaggerated as only having top-end power. This is an inline 4 that is so quick off the mark, just so, and I don't mean speedy, which it is, but it's so quick to respond. You're moving before you even hear a rev. You're just, and back to the beginner-friendly thing, and don't get me wrong, don't buy this as your first bike, but it's beginner-friendly in the sense that you look and you're there. You look around that corner and you're there. It doesn't matter how tight, hairpin, how lumpy bumpy the road looks. So in a way, it's kind of biking on easy mode. You don't really need to strategize as much. Where we were riding around this bit of Cambridgeshire, I've never seen anything like it. I probably didn't record much of it, but some corners were like something out of Lord of the Rings. It felt like New Zealand, how sharp the hairpins were, how bumpy the camber got. But that would scare the pants off me on the Vulcan, especially if cars were coming on the other way. On this bike, we're on the other side now. Nothing happened. So I can see how having a magic carpet like this is really appealing. And it is, truthfully, spoiler alert, it is something that I want for my next bike. A couple of things that I loved about this bike and also that I got wrong is cruise control. When I'm driving the car, I've got to the point where I don't really want any more gadgets. I'm very happy to have no reversing camera, no beepity beep beep, no anything really apart from cruise control. I really like my cruise control. It just keeps me well behaved. It's sort of the anti-road rage button. You know, you get 59, 60, 61, whatever. Boop, that's what I'm doing now. I should have learned how this works before tinkering with it, but I was a bit thick. I played with what looked like the cruise control buttons and it worked. And I cruised at 40 and it was so nice on my right hand. You know, I didn't even know this was possible on a bike. When I tried it again later, so I turned it off, carried on riding, cornering and stuff. Went to try it again, because the cruise control on button, like the first thing you press, is on the right hand, it was very easy to yank the throttle with a brush of friction, nothing at all, and nearly catapulted into the Riverine. I don't know, start some controversy in the comments about that. So I'm not blaming the bike for that, but the locations of some of the things, while also trying to maintain control, kind of gets me in it gets my boomer sense tingling. Like, is it a lot of buttons? Is it too many gadgets? But again, it's like, well, get good, scrub. Just don't press stuff, don't play with stuff. But it is a lot of low-hanging fruit. It's a lot of gadgety stuff in front of your face. But I can definitely see the appeal. And the difference between this bike and the GSX1000 GT is that the GT is supposedly sort of a more sporty position. But when I sat on it, I didn't ride it, when I sat on it a few weeks ago, I could get feet down much easier because it wasn't this ADV position. The one thing I will say about the adventure shape is it is SUV mode. It feels like, well, I am high and mighty above everything else I can see around every tree and bush and corner, so I do see that appeal. It was also much easier to U-turn, corner, anything like that. Having said that, I was a little bit shocked, and I know it's a really lazy thing to say about any bike, the seat was rubbish, but the seat was rubbish. I was kind of surprised for the, I'm not going to say for the price point because it's affordable, but for the advancement, for the sort of the upper end of bike. You know, it's not beginner bike, inverted commas. It was worse than my Vulcan's seat, which is genuinely infamous for being a bad seat for more than 40 minutes. This was maybe 10 minutes in and I was feeling it. Now, I can put that down to maybe I'm just not used to the upright, but then the Vulcan is pretty upright. It's not a full-blown cruiser. It's more like a Bonnie, sort of a Bonneville type position, but in a cruiser shape. So yeah, the seat was kind of abysmal for what is supposed to be a adventure / touring / everything bike. So that surprised me. Maybe it is just something that your gooch gets used to. We'll see. But yeah, that surprised me a little bit. It wasn't super user friendly. I'm 85 kilos on a good day, and I know there are much larger bikers out there, so yeah, it did surprise me. Or maybe that's why. Maybe if you have a bit more mass around your bootay, it's more comfy. But yeah, it didn't make me feel as much like I was on a magic carpet as I did in the first 5 minutes. Talking about boomerisms, what you do get with this bike and what you do get with the GSX1000 GT Plus is panniers. I never thought I would be old enough to actually want panniers, to seek out panniers, but these do come, as far as I know, they come with it, and they're sort of quite a sleek part of the bike, so it doesn't look like you've bought an adventure bike and then a shad 3-piece system and bolted that on, and then other givey boxes and bolted them on. It just looks like the bike has continued on being quite sleek, but you also have a boot to put your milk and maybe helmet in. I hope it can fit a helmet because that would be the best benefit. I haven't quite advanced past just using a big backpack, but I can see the appeal of having proper... Ooh, that might be where I did a little accidental catapult. I've never deliberately done a wheelie, so I'm not sure what it feels like. Maybe that's what happened there. Now by this point I'm heading back, but because I'm more comfortable, I'm also slightly less aware, so I do get beeped a couple of times. I think that's because I noticed my exit way too late and stopped quite sharply. I'm not going to moan about drivers too much, but if you have to beep because someone's slowing down, then maybe you don't need to be that close. So the roads here are kind of neat. The reason the camera bobbles all over the place is because it's attached to my pocket, not the bike, so it's not that I'm wobbling the handlebars around all day. Is this where we turned in? Yes, it is. I think it's quite a bit further back that I took the wrong exit, had to stop for a minute and then came back. I'll probably stop another time along this road trying to figure out if I've missed the turning, and it carried on. So, in summary, I would say that this is pretty easy to live with, even though it sounds like I just ragged on the whole thing. That's purely because it's such a leap from sitting on the floor with feet forward to sitting so upright. I can't even tell you where the pegs were because I missed them half the time, and you're just floating. Whatever the suspension is that's in there, it's not like my bike where you can run over a squirrel and know what gender it is. This bike, you don't feel a thing. So I could quite happily go ride across the country on one of these, and I actually hopefully will when it comes to the GSX1000 GT. I would also like to do a quick shout out to this beautiful part of England, which is Whittlesea. Now, I mean, no offence to Peterborough whatsoever, but I was a little bit nervous about not just the trip to Wheels, which is a phenomenally boring trip from Corby, where I am. And, I tried to be very mindful, very demure on the way there. It was the worst possible ride out. And everyone knows that your first ride is a bit pants, you stop, you have a breath, and then your second ride, you're a much better rider. But this first ride there, it was all cars everywhere. I don't know, do people not have jobs? I don't know, I can't talk, I don't have a real job. I'm a massage therapist. So I'm on the way there anyway. I'm in a poo sandwich of big metal boxes. Stop for petrol at the most expensive petrol station in the world. I think that, where they know you're here, so you have to be here, you're stuck here. And then spent about 15 minutes trying to come out of it, had to go back on myself. Sorry, I'm just rambling like an old fart about the route. The point is, got there and got to this, if you can call it city centre, I suppose. Not full-blown city, but lots of, cramped up traffic. Obviously, it was like a slow race all the way there, just from red light to red light to red light. Got to Wheels, did our whole conversation, a lovely time, got out on my test ride. That's what I thought I would be riding back into, but lovely Mr. Salesman man advised turning a different way to a place called Whittlesea, and this gave sort of a lovely north bank, I think. There's riverside, these strange little topsy-turvy turns, and this is me right here taking a very wrong exit and kind of wobbling back on myself like I'm on my CBT, because I'm absolutely not used to my tiny legs dangling over the edge of this thing. And yet it's still not overly heavy. It's not terrifying like I think I'm going to drop it and end up paying the overheads. And then we take off again. Just hopefully, eventually. Did I leave the kickstand down? Oh no, sorry, this is me stopping to figure out where the hell I am. I think I'm only about 500 yards from there. There we go. Yeah, I'm only just around the corner there. I'll just chuck that out. So it was a gorgeous little place to wheel around, and I would happily do it again with someone on the back. I would even more happily do it again without cars up my backside, but with that comes confidence, and I shouldn't be caring about what's going on behind me anyway. As long as I'm doing my own limits, ride my own ride. It was an absolute blissful day out, despite having no idea if it was going to be 5 degrees or 30. During this ride I was wearing like a jumper, a hoodie, an underlayer, the TT jacket, all this stuff, because I thought it was going to be windy, rainy, and here we go, sun blasting down on us. Thank you, Mr. Salesman Man, for an absolutely delightful day out.